The best examples of the marriages that took place in ancient Egypt between the king and the commoner woman who didn't have a blue blood or nobility background are the marriages of King Amenophis III and his wife Ti, and King Akhenaton and Nefertiti, and King Ramesses II and Nefertari, and others who bore the title of the great wife of the king and had no royal origin, but when married became legal queens. Thus, a queen is a queen by the right of marriage, and the king is a king by the right of birth. Sometimes, the husband of the princess took the throne, like in the cases of Semenchekara and Tutankhamun, but that happened in certain circumstances, which is the non-existence of a male inheritant to the dead king. Thus the kingship transfers to the husband of the daughter as a sort of connection between the current ruler and the preceding one. It's noticeable also that in case of the non-existence of a daughter, there was no problem in sitting on the throne. The king then chose one of his men who was suitable for the throne to take it after him. This was clearly shown in the choice of Hor-Imheb to one of the greatest leaders in his army, who is Ramesses I, who established the 19th dynasty and had no actual relation with the 18th dynasty by relation or marriage. None of the Egyptian kings married his sister to add legitimacy to his throne. The king married after the death of his wife, just in need of a new wife, and not necessarily his sister. It was proved that the women of the royal family married the leaders of the army and the rulers of the nomes and the high officials of the country, and none of them was prohibited of marriage just to guarantee the continuity of the throne to the king after the death of his wife. If the king needed that, he would have married all his sisters together to guarantee the legitimacy of his throne forever, but that never happened. There is a belief that King Amenophis III and Queen Hatshepsut, whose divine births were pictured on the walls of Luxor Temple and Hatshepsut's temple, had presented these scenes to add legitimacy to the rule. These claims say that King Amenhotep III, by that, added legitimacy to his ruling, for he was a son of a secondary wife called Mutemoya, who never appeared on the monuments of her husband Thutmose IV, and was even considered by some a foreigner. But in fact, the claim of the king to be a son of god Amun-Ra has no meaning that he lacks legitimacy, for the god in that matrimonial between himself and the queen takes the figure of the earthly king, who is the father of the pictured king, and mates with the queen, and puts into her the seed of the coming king, and announces him to be a future king. We notice here that the god had transformed into the shape of the earthly king, but in reality he is a god, which proves the theory of the inheritance of the throne through the father. But the queen mother is just the same as she is in her earthly form, and did not change to any goddess to add legitimacy to her son. Thus, the king takes the throne through his father, or the god who was impersonified in the shape of his father, regardless of the status of his mother and her position, and whether she was from royal origin or not. Here, King Amenhotep III didn't claim anything new about his mother, but revered her despite her not being a royal princess. King Thutmose III took the throne of Egypt by claiming the prophecy of Amun, in which he claimed that god Amun chose him to be a king when he was still a child. If just his marriage to the inheritant princess was enough to prove his legitimacy, he would have just married Princess Neferu-Ra to mount the throne peacefully, but that did not happen. In fact, there is a great doubt about the marriage between them ever happened, as she never got the title of the wife of the king. The early kings of the 18th dynasty of the New Kingdom married their sisters for special reasons, the most important of which was their victory over the Hyksos, which gave the family special pride of their members, like the marriage between Seqenen-Ra and his sister Ea-Hotep, and Amasis and his sister Ahmose-Nefertari, and Amun-Hotep I and his sister Merit-Amon I. The existence of prominent queens like Titi Sheri, who is considered the great-grandmother of the New Kingdom, and Queen Ea-Hotep, who is a mother of the New Kingdom, played important roles throughout the entire time of the struggle until independence. They definitely had their opinions concerning the marriage of Amasis from his sister Ahmose-Nefertari, who also played a role during the Liberation War. This is considered a type of close connection and union among the members of a family that was basically established for the resistance and the war against the Hyksos occupation of Egypt. The king was also a human being who had feelings like anyone else, and was possible to live a love story with any girl from the common people from any level, and had the right to marry her and elevate her to the queen's level. It was not necessary in all cases the existence of a royal princess for the king to marry, for there is a possibility that he didn't have a sister at all to marry. Then he could marry anyone and lift her up to the position of the queen. The king didn't have a law about polygamy like the rest of the people, for he had the right to marry whenever and whoever he wants, and as many as he wanted. There wasn't in ancient Egypt the term of legal wife of the king and illegal wife. All the wives of the kings were equal in rights and in their connection with him, and that's shown in the monuments of these kings. The marriage of the king in ancient Egypt with his daughter was only mentioned in 3 stories from the New Kingdom, and that was in the reign of King Amun-Hotep III and Amun-Hotep IV and Ramesses II. The title that's connected with that marriage is Hemet-Nesu-Weret, which means the great wife of the king, and it had been used especially in the New Kingdom. This title was given to Sat Amon, the daughter of King Amun-Hotep III, and the 2 daughters of Akhenaton, Merit-Aton and Ankhsenpa-Aton. During the reign of King Ramesses II, his daughters Benet-Anat and Merit-Amon and Nebet-Tawi took that title, but that doesn't mean necessarily a real marriage between the father and his daughter, especially that many of them took that title during the life of their mothers, and it isn't logical that the king marries his daughter and elevates her to the level of the first wife when her mother is still alive, performing her role in ruling Egypt as a wife of the king. It's well known that the Queen of Egypt, who bore the title of Hemet-Nesu-Weret in the New Kingdom, had many roles to play, whether they were religious or political or social. Most of the princesses who bore that title took it in a late period during the reign of their fathers and in special circumstances. Thus, it's possible that the role of the great royal wife was distributed between the mother and her daughter. It's very possible that the mother queens got old and couldn't perform all their public duties. Then the daughter was considered a deputy of her mother to do her job in public affairs, which can only be done by the one who bore the title of Hemet-Nesu-Weret. Thus, it was important to give the daughter the title on behalf of her mother. There is a possibility that the mother queens had allowed the giving of that title to their daughters to prepare them for the future, and in expectation that they would become queens soon enough. the ancient Egyptian history that the father married his daughter, a true marriage, for many consider the title of the great royal wife to be just an additional honorable title given to the royal daughters as a sacred thing. During the reign of King Amun-Hotep III and Akhenaton and Ramesses II, there is an absence of the title Hemet Neter, or wife of the god, or wife of the king. Some suggest that the title of Hemet Nesu was given to princesses instead of giving them the title of Hemet Neter. There isn't a solid proof that this marriage was not symbolic, for the princesses who took that title played the role of the goddess in some royal rituals, and it's also possible that the queen mother had a role in giving her daughter that title, for it's noticed that the queen mothers Ti and Nefertiti and Nefertari and Iset Nefret, whose daughters took that title, were prominent queens in the history of Egypt. The Queen Sat Amon, who is a daughter of King Amun-Hotep III and Queen Ti, had appeared with her daughter in a scene taking the title of Hemet Nesu, or King's wife, while his wife was titled Hemet Nesu Weret, or the Great Royal Wife, in the same time. When Sat Amon appeared alone, she bore the title of Hemet Nesu Weret, which indicates that she was a deputy of her mother. Some points to the fact that the two young princesses, Merit Aton and Ankhsenpa Aton, are girls of their grandparent Akhenaton and not their father, for they were both royal wives of Semenchekara and Tutankhamun. Secondly, thus there is no problem that the two princesses were daughters of Semenchekara and Tutankhamun. Both princesses bore the title of Sat Hemet Nesu, or daughters of the queen. Thus it's possible that the title of Hemet Nesu Weret, which the two princesses took, was connected with that title. It isn't known how the royal marriage between the king and his daughter, whether it was symbolic or not, took place. Was it a private celebration confined to the king and his family, or public, in which the people participated? Were there gifts given by the king to the high officials celebrating the royal marriage, and how the announcement of that royal marriage happened all across the country? The answers to these questions are not possible, for the monuments didn't explain how that happened. Yet, we can speculate from simple clues that there was a celebration of the royal marriage. For we find that when the foreign wives' marriages was mentioned in Thutmose III and IV and Amun-Hotep III and Ramesses II reign, there were festivals in all of Egypt celebrating the arrival of the bride. It was mentioned that the Mitannian wife of Amun-Hotep III, on her arrival to Egypt, was loaded with a massive quantity of gifts and accompanied by 317 women and servants. So was the event during the reign of King Ramesses II, when the Hittite princess arrived. We see the celebrations of that happy event and the popular celebrations in the streets of the capital, and the appearance of the queen beside the king in the palace marvelously, then changing her name and taking the new name of Maed Hur Neferu Ra. These simple hints of the marriage of Egyptian kings to foreign princesses prove that the marriage of the king with an Egyptian queen definitely happened according to certain rituals and huge celebrations. We know of no other king but Amun-Hotep III who declared his marriage when he married Queen Ti, for he had ordered the making of memorial scarabs that commemorates their marriage or mention their relationship when certain events happened during his reign. For a woman to rule Egypt was something against the customs of the ancient Egyptians and unnatural. Yet the circumstances allowed some of the queens to rule the country, and in most cases, at the end of a dynasty, when weakness prevailed in it. By the end of the fourth dynasty, Queen Khentkaus reached the throne after bitter struggle with members of the royal family. Neat-Ekret ruled at the end of the sixth dynasty, after the country reached bottoms during the reign of Pipi II. Queen Sobek-Nefru ruled by the end of the 12th dynasty, after the chaos that prevailed the country by the death of King Amun-Imhad III. Queen Tausret controlled everything by the end of the 19th dynasty, after several weak kings. The queens who ruled Egypt are six. They are Merit-Neith, Khentkaus, Neat-Ekret, Sobek-Nefru, Hatshepsut, and Ta-Usret. Petrie found in one of the tombs of Abydos a panel on which the name of Queen Merit-Neith was written alone, which means she ruled the country third in number in the fourth dynasty. But since many seals that bore the name of King Den were found in that tomb, and he was the fifth king in the first dynasty, some thought that she was his wife. But the existence of these seals is due to the fact that there had been an attack on the tomb of the king that's adjacent to Queen Merit's tomb. So there was a mix between the contents of the two tombs. Queen Merit-Neith is the only queen amongst the queens of the royal queens who had two tombs, one in Saqqara and one in Abydos, beside the tombs of the kings, which means that she was indeed a ruling queen. The name Merit-Neith means the one beloved by the goddess Neith, who was a goddess of size and was worshipped all across the country, but mentioned basically in Esna temple, where they celebrated a special feast called the Feast of the Arrival of Neith to Sais.